Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Two Doors podcast. I am here with Stefan. Stefan has a career spanning over 20 years and is a senior technical leader who has built high-performing engineering teams across the directories, financial services, and FMCG retail sectors. Working at companies like MYOB, ANZ, Coles, NAB, Toyota, and Reestech, to name a few, Stefan specializes in product, technology, customers, and thinking for the user. Stefan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Alex. Great to be here.
I'm excited for today. you're someone that, when we talk about Melbourne tech, you can talk for Melbourne tech, right? You've worked at many of these companies.
I've seen a lot of the insides of a lot of Melbourne tech companies, right? So, one of my boring facts is I've never really worked anywhere else. So, as people have gone overseas or they've worked in other states, I've been nicely here for 20 years in Melbourne, working in the IT side. So, yeah.
And you must have seen a huge shift as well, slowly. But what I'm noticing now is that we're shifting really quick. And how do we hold on?
Absolutely. I think so. If I think about where I started, City Search was almost a scale-up organization that got bought out and overrun by the other directory teams to where I'm now with Coles. The organization size changed, but I think the element or the desire for change and progress has been it's picking up rapidly, right? So much so, as we were saying earlier, this first half has been insane, right? There's been just so much work going through. People are trying to get a lot done. So, yeah.
It's crazy how it's already April as well, isn't it? It's where's the year gone?
Correct.
And what are you seeing? Any fundamental shifts? Any mentality changes or anything? Because there is a lot out there, and there's a lot of but it's the way I think about it is when React came out, and then everyone was like, "Oh my god, it's everyone sort of jumped on it." But it was are you building a social network platform, or do we need it? So yeah, are you seeing any shifts?
Not. Again, the obvious one is obviously AI, right? That's everywhere. That's in your face. But everything else is sort of moving back to the fundamentals. There's a lot of folks looking at, hey, how do we do things on-prem? How do we, some of that agile change in pace has gone backwards, right? So hey, I need better estimates. But I think it's sentiment to the market, right? So there's a lot of organizations that need certainty in spend, that need to be at least perceived to be going, okay, cool. If I've got an estimate, that means I feel a bit more secure about how much I'm going to spend, right? I think it depends on which industry you're in or which organization you're in. That sometimes can be a false sense of safety on estimations, right?
Yes. And you've worked at many different products and companies and stuff. Who do you think does it the best and why?
For me, it's organizations that are, I guess, that have that hunger and almost don't have the perceived unlimited budget for IT, right? There's organizations that have to make a genuine choice of, hey, in order to spend $100 in IT, you've got to sell, $1,000 of product, right? Because there's so margins and that market's getting tough. So I think for that group, I think you end up necessity drives some of that innovation. Necessity almost forces their hand to be more efficient, more lean. Whereas you get bigger organizations sometimes who feel like they have to put extra layers in to provide that governance because it's such a sprawl for them, right? So I think that for me is where I'm seeing that.
Yeah, so it's that mentality that I love it because it's when you think like the product, or you think you take ownership rather than just being, this is my job, but just turn up or whatever. And I get that sense from you and our, all our conversation. You've got such passion and energy for it, and that's what I love.
And I think for me, it's you can have that in any area. So for one of the things I've got in my career is I've worked across not just a number of industries, but a number of domains, right? So from, raw programming, microservices, all of that, architecture to security and identity. As long as you put yourself in the end user's perspective or the end person's perspective of the service you're delivering, it doesn't matter what domain you will naturally pick that up, right? If you can put yourself in, and identity at the moment, I always put myself in when I'm logging in, when I'm trying to do MFA, rather than, hey, here's how I will do it from the other side of it. And I think that for me is one of my driving forces. I like seeing that perspective, regardless of whether it's an internal customer or an external customer.
And identity is very needed. I'm always posting about the latest statistics of cyber attacks and all of this. And it's I think someone just said it. We had Peter on the podcast, and he's head of cyber at Brennan IT, and he's like, please don't give your passwords away, like, have backups and do all that. And even yesterday I saw a friend's account had been hacked, and it's like someone posted about this crypto guy has made loads of money, go and join it. And it's sad to see, isn't it? But identity is needed, and I think
Absolutely.
It's here to stay. It's only going to grow,
and it's getting deeper and deeper into the youth as well. So I've got a 16-year-old daughter. She busted her phone. No surprise. 16-year-olds do that at times. And she couldn't use the screen. And I was like, do you have anything on that phone that you need? And she's like, no. Half an hour later, she's like, hey, how do I get my MFA set up again on my phone? I'm like, I can't imagine. I've got another daughter who's older. When she was 16, that wasn't a thing for her, right? She didn't have to worry about those things. But that's how I guess organizations are pushing this down so much that and you're right, it's an important factor. But yeah, I thought that was quite apt seeing her go, no, MFA, and like, nope, you can't do it yourself. You have to actually call and reset and find out, prove your identity again, right?
Yes. And for anyone listening that doesn't know what MFA is, multiple factor
authentication. Yeah, so it's essentially the Microsoft or Google authentication app that is the second factor.
Yeah,
for that.
It's funny because the amount of times I've hit I'm not a robot, I'm like, should I actually be a robot?
Yeah, I find that fun. Like, okay, cool. The click box is the one thing that robots can't do. I didn't know that. For sure.
I love, and let's talk about technology.
Yeah,
because you've obviously seen technology a far amount. You've seen it change or whatever. And we were having a great discussion just before this, and we've got Ryan Bigg was on the show, who's like one of the biggest contributors to Ruby on Rails in Australia. He's written books on this and stuff, and my heart is in open source as well. But like, yeah, what do you think about the future of tech? And
like I said earlier, I think at the moment there's a pattern in tech of going bit retro. So everything that was cloud, now people are talking about on-prem, agile to waterfall, that sort of stuff. But one of the trends I'd like to see back is more open source. When I first started the career, there was a lot of open source work people were doing. I think the security risks are real. Like, you have to be super conscious. You can't just go into open source blindly. I think you can invest in that element. And I think there's still a really big, good community out there that can help in that workforce. So if you look about, talent shortages and things like that, for me, this is sort of one of those strategies that I look to employ around, cool, is there anything open source that we can do? Now, again, you don't get it for free, and you'd want to build a lot of guardrails, and you want to apply some good security practices to make sure you're not just picking up anyone's rubbish. But I'd love to see a bit more of that in there, right? And sort of how that then translates into meetups and community forums and organizations helping each other. I think you can start to do that too. So, and I think for me, from a business perspective, it gives you a good platform to then customize what's key to you. So instead of buying something so commercial and still customizing it, changing that angle and going, hey, cool, core platform, standard, I'll customize where I need to.
And I also, in addition, it's that community element. I feel like there's people that are best friends in other continents because they're contributing to something rather than just buying cookie cutter. And right now I'm seeing the pandemic of like loneliness where people are like, and loneliness at the end of the day is you just don't feel like you've been seen or heard.
Absolutely.
And so I think, let's make open source great again.
I'd love it, right? And again, being in the security domain, one of the things I've really found fascinating hearing and seeing is how threat actors operate. They operate as a community, as a hive. They're working together to solve their problems. Like I think in one of the recent breaches, I saw that someone had got data, had encrypted passwords, and was offering to the community of going, if you can help me unencrypt these data, we can share some of the wins, right? In their terms, wins. But like that's if the folks we're trying to protect ourselves against are operating that, and we're operating as individuals, it's going to be a really hard battle, right? Like it's sheer smarts of that is going to be really hard to fight against. So.
That's fascinating insight, Stefan. I bet you see so many interesting things.
And it is. I think it's really interesting seeing what actually occurs, how other organizations respond to cyber threats, how the organization you work for responds to cyber threats. So, and again, with the perspective of being in security and out of security, there's another layer there that sometimes you see organizations, and for good reasons, restrict internal knowledge of security incidents that are going on at the time. And from what I've seen inside, there's got to be a better gap for that. There's value in transmitting more of that information timely to a wider internal organization, I feel.
And how can people do that in a healthy manner? Because I can understand, isn't it? Certain managers are like, well, we don't want to share that. But then it's like, hey, this is actually that community element of that company rising, and we've got great standards. Because my mindset is that if you fail, it's good because you can learn. It's just don't do it again.
Correct.
So like, I forgot who was sharing. They said that they had a great manager, and if someone failed, they'd go first time. And if they did the same, they'd say second time. And I was like, that's kind of brutal. But I was like, as long as you're learning from the failure. So yeah, how can people collaborate in a better environment? What do you think?
I think that there's got to be an element. Obviously, the no-brainer is trust, right? Like you got to make sure you've got that element of trust in there. But it can't be lazy sharing and collaboration. I think you've always, one of the examples I see is a lot of copy and pasting of information, right? Managers go, yep, this is what I've got, and then they paste in there. There's an element of receive it, absorb it, translate it, right? And because you've got a different audience, right? You've got to be accountable for going, no, I'm not just going to be a pass-through. So I think that's really key, because the reason for that is when you get questions from folks you've just shared it with, it shouldn't be, hey, I have to go ask. It should be 90% of the time, no, this is what I understand. It's you, because at that point, it's your message, not the person above you. So and I think the security element is the same thing, right? You have the information, you've got to be smart and clever and learn what's shareable, and to who. So you got to, and at certain points it's timely as well, right? So certain things can't be shared immediately, but they may be able to share in a month's time once the incident's closed. That sort of element is there too. So one of the things I try to find there's no easy checkbook of, okay, cool. Yeah, if I follow these dots, I'm now collaborating, right?
Yeah, so, it is an art, and it's
absolutely
that center of excellence that really helps companies thrive, because you need to share, but then it is that element of the trust and then post of what you're doing. So I enjoy that perspective. And then do you have any advice for people to have good security identity practices?
It's use the frameworks, but don't be dogmatic. I think you've got to really, for security, you've got to understand the intent you're trying to do, right? So because one of the things that really drives me crazy is password change frequency. I feel like that sometimes gets overused as a control, whereas I'd rather people go, hey, just like give people, like if you think about psychology of how people, like most of the time, 90%, if you're forced to change a password often, you're more likely to just add the number. Right?
True.
Right? Okay. And then, people go, well, you should protect against it. I'm like, no, it should be an education thing, right? Like you've got to treat it like it's something you sell. If they don't have to buy it and they don't follow it, forcing them to do it is just like a hostage situation, right? You should be going, hey, what's a better sell? How do I achieve my security posture and make sure the customer's got the attention, right? So for me, I'd go for more complex passwords, change less frequently, right? So, and certain organizations, you've got to work with your audit side of it as well. So that's the other element, I think, for things I've seen outside. So I've been on the other end of it, outside of security, when I've been told, hey, it's an audit control. People go, this is how we always do it. I'm like, no, audit controls are intent to gain, right? So working at one of the banks, we were doing similar things, right? So where the thing, you couldn't move to the cloud, or we couldn't move to the cloud. I'm like, no, why? And there's an audit control. I'm like, no, well, let's have a look at the audit control, what it needs, and talk about, well, is it, and can we still accommodate it in the technology stack in there? So I think there's those elements when you're looking at security.
I enjoy that, the frameworks, but not being too dogmatic, because I've definitely been in corporates before where it's like, time to change your password again, and it's like, I'm not going to remember this one. And it's like, so there's little things. And switching gears, Stefan, because I like how we talk about high performing teams as well. Is there a secret? Is there a recipe? Is it an art? Educate us.
I don't think it's a secret. I think it's got to be, and there's no, it's dynamic, right? I haven't worked in any organization where I did the same thing over and over again to achieve high performing teams, because in order to drive a high-performing team, you've got organizational change you've got to deal with, right? And that drives some of the elements in there. As I was saying previously, what I try desperately not to do is, hey, we're doing this because somebody else said. I think that element of translation applies there as well, right? So for me, high-performing teams results in your team having a lot of faith and assurance in you, in not just what in you as a defender or being able to give them the airspace, but just you personally, right? Going, hey, that person knows what we're doing, why we're doing it, and not just, hey, if he wasn't there, I just go to the person above them, right? So I think that's really important for me because for some of the best teams I've worked with is people go, no, okay, cool, I know what Steph has said. I'm just like, I know what the intent is. I'm confident to do it, right? And they've done things and I've had to go, hey, you actually didn't have to go that far. Like I had one person who worked overnight because he thought the work could not meet. He couldn't. It was the only way he was going to meet a deadline. He told me. I'm like, bro, like you told me that. Like we talk about these things, right? I appreciate the fact that you think you had to go above and beyond. And the best part of that is he didn't tell me he had worked overnight. One of his colleagues told me. And so that was like you look for indicators of, hey, that's a great team I've got, right? Where someone is looking out for them and giving me the, hey, they've worked really hard. You need to send them home. They worked overnight, right? Like that sort of stuff. And this was before remote working was a fully thing. So this person had actually worked in the office overnight. Yeah. Bizarre. But again, and as a good leader, you need to recognize that and not just walk past it. So one of the things that always sticks with me, I don't know where it's come from, but it's someone told me, but maybe a famous words, but it's, the standard you walk past is the standard you endorse. And even on good and bad stuff, that has to be, you've got to keep that in mind, right? If that's not the behavior you want or the expectation you had, you've got to go correct it. No matter how good it was or how beneficial it looked, you've got to be making it enough. You can't just walk away going, well, they chose to do that. Right? I think that's really important.
That's brilliant. And that's great leadership as well. That's Gilbert Enoka, the mindset coach for New Zealand Legacy. It's a great book. It's and you're right. It's what you've just said there is a theme that I'm getting talking to many leaders. It's communication skills. And that's where the industry is changing, I feel. Like younger software engineers that are coming in, they're battling these AI tools. But if you can communicate going, hey, I'm about to do this, I was thinking that, like, if that person spoke to you, you'd be like, because I get a sense that you enjoy psychological safety, looking after your team. But like, that's great that the relationship of someone else being able to tell you going, hey, they were working overtime and doing this. So you're aware and you're like, because when I find no one on the podcast has had this, that when there's high ego and low self-esteem, the leader is very fictitious. And that's very like, what do you mean? Like, they're shouting and stuff, but you're just very, you can turn up the same you can be emotionally present.
Absolutely. And look, don't get me wrong. I definitely can be noisy and have tone and, show passion, right? I don't have a problem. Again, I think it's done in the right way and respectful. You've got to, I welcome passion in conversations that we're having with teams and things like that. So, I don't mind a little bit of that.
Well, I mean, when you're going through it all as well, and it's like, I love accountability. And I think that's where you empower the team to take response and accountability for the things that they are doing. Yeah. And I mean, are there any characteristics you look for in people in building that high performing team?
It's a challenge, right? I think I look at that question as a recruitment question. So no matter what is said and done at this stage, our only initial avenue most of the time is a piece of paper virtually, right? The resume. And so for me, that's the first spot to try and I think you reflect some of the stuff you do. I'm horrible at my resume, right? But struggle with the bio, right? Like it's not a thing I'm really good at. So I tend to go and try and read as much as I can between the lines from a CV, and always try and lean to benefit of the doubt. It's getting much harder with the emergence of Gen AI and people using that to generate resumes that match up job description. So now I'm really finding it really difficult to go, oh, have you just redone the resume with Gen AI? So that's the first thing. Then it's in the interview stage of the conversation. So I genuinely rarely have a script unless the organization directive is that way, and tend to be a probing question conversation piece. And not just on skill, but on personality, how you approach problems, getting a real sense for not what you have done, but how you do it, what your potential is, those sort of elements in there. Skill and tech, and, for me, your ability to adapt and things like that, I think those are the areas I look for to sort of complement the high-performing team. And I think, again, maybe most, maybe some, but one of my weaknesses is, and I'm consciously, is that bias, right? So I'm always wary of, is the person, do I like the person because they're similar to me? Are they, am I leading the witness in some of these things? And all the other biases in there, right? So having multiple people in the interview process always helps that stuff as well. Yeah. So.
And there's a lot of wisdom in what you just said there. Like, I love the point that you talk about adaptability, because that's what Charles Darwin says. He's like, Einstein, where we're like, the most successful person is the person who can adapt and evolve the most. And we're seeing that right now. Imagine if you were anti-AI. Like, where would that leave you? It's like being anti-CDs or anti-DVD. It's like it's
and there were people like that, right? You think about Kodak and those sort of stories, right?
True.
So, but yeah, you're right. I think, and I laugh because I think I'm a laggard when it comes to Gen AI and AI in general. Right? It just, and it's for me, it's mainly because I feel like that's taking the people person part of it out. Like I genuinely enjoy interacting with people, and so that has been a challenge. I'm still struggling with remote working, and not the concept of it, like people. It's the how do I change my style to work with remote working? Right, I'm a horrible communicator type. It takes me longer to type something, and I process it too much. Right, like, is the words right? Have I got the right tone? And so for me, I think one of the things my teams have had to get used to is I'm a frequent Teams caller, just out of the random, and gets a few people, like they're like, oh, what's wrong? What are we in trouble for? Sort of stuff. So, but yeah, I think from adaptability, I think that's where I'm struggling personally.
Yeah. Well, the newer generation, they're the text generation, aren't they? Absolutely. So they don't but older, you have to respect and give a call, and it's that blend in leadership of going, well, what's needed of the team, and how do we adapt? So, Absolutely. No, I love that. And any imparting wisdoms, anything you'd like to share with any listeners out there, Stefan?
Look, I think there's the general stuff that's worked for me, right? Getting out of your comfort zone, not sticking to, exploring multiple industries, I think for me has been really something good. The other thing we didn't really talk about was meetups. I love going to meetups, and I think might be how we met at one stage in there. And I think I'd love to see some of that happening more. I know there's a fair few online meetups and things like that, but for me, try and get out to some of those in-person stuff because you do genuinely get some good value, not just from the topics, but the interactions you get from folks as well. So.
Yeah, you make great friends. Yeah, it was the Angular meetup
Correct.
We met many minutes ago.
Correct,
so
right?
I love that.
Yeah.
Great. Well, that's a brilliant place to leave it. So thank you so much for coming on the show, Stefan.
Thank you so much, Alex. It's been great.